All right, and we are live. Hello, and welcome back to the Gumtree of Liberty podcast. I'm your host, Liberty Down Under, and I've got with me today Vic Klim and Jack, and we're going to talk a bit about Victoria reopening and the mindset there. Do you want to start us off, Jack, talking about the restrictions that have eased? Because I think that you guys have hit 70% vaccinated down in Victoria. So can you
Yeah.
tell us a bit about what they've eased for you guys for restrictions?
Um, so it's basically the restrictions. So at 70% double dose, not single, double, it says reasons to leave home and curfew no longer in place. Thank God, because people were really listening to that. 10 people, including dependents, can visit your home per day. Says vaccination strongly recommended, but again, how are you going to even police this sort of thing?
Also,
You
that
can't
was
enforce
arbitrary
that.
as well.
15 people can gather outdoors. Thankfully, because zero cases have been spread outside the entire time. So, lucky that's there, because you wouldn't want to spread coronavirus outside, would you? You can do training like sport and sort of professional training, that sort of stuff. I think gyms are reopening in November. I don't know how many of those gyms are actually going to take vaccinations. So pubs and clubs are open, but gyms aren't, because that makes sense. Having people drinking and in clubs and all of that stuff, that's just perfect, because you wouldn't want people exercising. Keep them drunk,
Do you still have
keep them
do you,
dumb.
do you still have that rule where you can't stand up and drink at the same time? Is that
No,
still
no. Actually, I'm not 100% sure, to be
I know when
completely
I know when
honest.
you I know when they reopened up in New South Wales, they said that
Mm.
there's that the no drinking or standing up rule still applied.
Well, that rule was because Daniel Andrews got butthurt because people flouted his restrictions. That's basically why Daniel Andrews implemented that rule. So basically, people went to um, Richmond in the middle of the pandemic to have drinks, and it was because they decided to do basically a hit and run a hit and run pub crawl is basically what they did. So they would go through, buy a beer, go for a walk, right? Working within the assigned restrictions, right? Not breaking any rules. It was just businesses trying to survive, because Daniel Andrews doesn't care about small business in this state. So he would rather see businesses die than allow them to have some kind of small loophole in order to avoid whatever it is they're trying to avoid, because reasons. So he comes out the next day and he's like, "Oh, you can't drink alcohol anymore with a mask on." And masks are mandatory, remember? So, it's like the whole thing is just so ridiculous, because, and this isn't the only time he's done this. This isn't the first time he did it either. Every single minuscule restriction added to the Victorian restrictions were added because it was a couple people defying him directly. Like, just watching him talk about the restrictions with this smirk on his face. He loves it. He enjoys it. He loves having this power. And that's the main reason that he should be removed from power. Because at this point, if it continues going, it's not going to end the way people think it's going to end. Like, people are like, "Oh, we've now got our freedom back. Let's yell off the balconies at 12 at night, because freedom."
Well, power trips rarely end, well.
And this is the problem in Victoria, is people are so apathetic. They don't care unless it directly affects them. But even when it does directly affect them, they don't care. So it's super. I don't know. It just none of it makes sense at all, and it hasn't for a long time. And somehow people are still okay with it. So
Well,
yes.
this goes back to the framing problem, because when you frame it as people, what is that they frame it? People being unvaccinated takes our freedoms away because we can't do this and this. Of course, the logic is flawed on many levels. For one, the vaccination don't stop transmissions and such, but it's the framing itself of other people not doing something, taking away your freedoms.
Yeah.
That is bullshit. That's one thing. And second thing is obviously, like the most obvious example, 80% or whatever percent of people have to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
Well, who decides that? Because if the government decides that, it's forcing people to get vaccinated in order to give them the ability to do things which the government themselves took away.
Yeah.
Therefore, they are the only ones to blame.
Yeah. So it's the other. I don't know, the whole thing doesn't make sense. Like the essential workers, the way that they can mandate this, and people are just like, okay, no worries, we'll just do it.
The thing is, people just accept their framing without even thinking. Well, it's in the way they set up the question, because a lot of people, they might disagree. Well, why does it have to be 80%? It has to be 70%. When the question should be, why is there a percentage set in the first place?
Yeah, and the percentages have moved every time they set it anyway.
Yeah,
right. It was 60%, then it was 70%. Now it's 80, and now it's 90% for full opening. If even unvaccinated, like, man, get fucked. If I don't want to take a vaccine because I don't want to submit to these fucking government mandates, it should be my choice. But here we are, right?
Of course, and it's not just the percentage; it's also the age.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. But just these mandates in general, the mandates in general are so absurd because vaccines have always been mandatory. Yeah, for traveling overseas. I've never had to get a vaccine to go to the fucking cinema.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
That's not the stupidest.
It's literally segregation. It literally is. And I tweeted earlier today, I'm like, we need to normalize shaming businesses that enforce it. Because businesses that enforce it are no different to businesses that enforced racial segregation.
Well, that was the exact argument I made.
Just because it's the normal thing doesn't make it right. I hate this appeal to what's the fallacy name? It's like argumentum.
Authority.
Yeah. It's not. No. It's not an appeal to authority. It's argumentum ad populum or something like that, where it's an appeal to a majority rule, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it right. It's like, the majority are doing it. Well, if the majority were,
it's not an argument for it being correct.
Yeah, like it doesn't make it right. It's the whole might makes right argument that power comes from the barrel of the gun, right? That's basically the argument that they're making, and that's not acceptable. So that's my problem with it. I have no problem with the vaccine. They actually came out with a new Melbourne, or Australian, might not have been Melbourne, but there's a company that made a new vaccine, which is they said it's nanocell technology as opposed to inducing I think it's a T cell reaction to then create the spike protein. It's preloaded. So it's not mRNA. It doesn't screw with your DNA. It doesn't do anything like that. It's just basically how a normal vaccine works. And they're trying to push it through, which is kind of interesting because if that's the case, then there should be no issues with getting the vaccine. But the issue has never been vaccines. It's always been the mandates. And this comes back to framing.
Yes, it does.
Because the media loves to frame people as anti-vax.
Yes, but it goes beyond the media. That's the thing, because the media has been fear mongering. It's that part's obvious. They have been citing the same framing as the government, but in my opinion, it seems like the government set it out first. They came up with an idea on how to handle the crisis, or give an impression that they're handling the crisis, and then the media just copied that. I doubt the 80% part or whatever percentage came from the media first.
No, they are basically copying what the government says. The government says this, therefore all the media will say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It is basically, it is, as you said, Victim, it's a framing question. And the problem is because we're Australians are very much have a duty mindset. If it's a duty, you'll do it. That's why we have the mandatory voting, is because people do it because it's a duty. People get the vaccine because it's a duty. There's not a right focus, it's a duty focus.
It's not quite. I mean, duty is something you do voluntarily, but yeah, the general gist is correct.
Well, duty is in the sense of you're obliged to do something.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If you're obliged to, it shouldn't be mandated. That's kind of the whole point,
Yeah, and I think if the mandates weren't there, I think more people would be vaccinated faster.
Well, that's true.
A lot of people seem to just not care about the mandates. Like it's like the idea of this just goes straight over their head, like it's happened before, but it hasn't. Like,
well, the thing is
unprecedented.
What I'm wondering about is how many people have been affected and how much, because like I don't want to think that if it goes far enough, then people will resist further, but it's kind of hard for me to judge, since so far South Australia has avoided most of the bullshit,
except with the Face ID stuff.
That stuff still hasn't come through yet. Once that does, then that'll be a major issue. Yeah.
But yeah, like it's
yeah, it is
so ridiculous,
shocking. But I think one thing that I liked is when I had the protests yesterday about the reopening and how it's all for the vaccinated, not for the unvaccinated. I loved how they had protesters moving around in groups of 15. So that the protest started by you walked around in a group of 15 people to comply with the restrictions to protest about it, which I thought was great because the police can't get you for that because it's legal.
Nice. Also, by the way, I just looked back at the Victoria roadmap, and I'm just looking at those numbers. Like, they're arbitrary as fuck.
And nothing the Victorian government has done has had any logic to it at all.
Well,
it is just unhinged, and nobody seems to care. Like, we had 262 days of lockdown. Gyms have been locked down for over a year.
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is there any reason why they would come up with those numbers? Like, there is no reason, but we will find out soon. We will find out soon when they're forced to release the justification. Because now, all of that is very secret, and they're hiding it. And they're hiding it for a reason. Because none of it was justified. None of it. And this is what I kept telling people. I'm like, just don't listen. Like, are you an adult or are you a child? Why do you need the government to direct you how to live your life? Grow the fuck up. Well, also because people are scared of the consequences. Like, even...
Okay, well, consequences happen when you defy government edicts. And if you don't defy government edicts, you get forced onto your knees and shot in the back of the head.
Yeah,
That's what happens.
They don't think that far. That's the thing. They just don't.
And this isn't a problem with Australians in general. Everything's very short-sighted because everything is very easy here. This is a very easy country to live in. There is no stress to living in Australia at all. Any stress is generally self-inflicted through overloading themselves or whatever it might be, right? It's the general, if you were to just live in Australia without any obligations, not working, you had money, you would be the calmest person on earth. Why? Because it's easy.
Yeah.
And this is where apathy comes from, and this is where people have this aversion to questioning authority because the cops are the friends, right? That's what we were told in school. Cops are the good guys. They're here to help. Fuck no, they're not. Victorian police, and I did a podcast on this with Polyglot about Victoria Police, and they, especially Victoria Police, have a very shady history when it comes to abusing their power. And we're seeing this every single day, every single time a protest comes up that doesn't fit the government's narrative. They're out there. 3,000 police officers were sent to the CBD.
For the last one, or
not the last one, the big one, the one where the old lady got pushed over.
Yeah.
There's 3,000 cops. Why? You know what I mean? Like, why? Why are the police? This is the other thing. Are the police in Victoria so lacking in morals that they will do anything for a paycheck? It really seems that way.
Well, that
really seems that way. Like, if you have a police force without morals, you only have an enforcement squad of the government. That's all it is. That's all it is. If they obey, as long as they get paid, you are a gun for hire. You are not a police officer.
That's kind of what they're supposed to be. This is why, you know, the government being normal is kind of the general idea. Because
But you even see this in the States, that police officers are walking off the job. A third of Chicago's police force refused to get the vaccine over the mandates.
Yeah.
A third in the most violent city in the entire country. A third. Yeah. That's a lot. Seattle, Oregon, both of these cities have had police walk off the job. Right?
You'd say it's hypocrisy, but it's clear that they care more about compliance than, you know, safety.
So it's yeah, and I think that's basically what it comes down to is and it goes into this this idea of them putting us in and out. Hold on. I do that thing. I'll put it. So I wrote up this thing, which was a timeline of the lockdowns. So basically, the first lockdown in Victoria was on March 30th. That was about a month after it got here. That lasted until the 12th of May. All right, not too bad, 43 days. It wasn't 12 days, but it wasn't 100 days, right? Then the next one was the big one, which was all Daniel Andrews' fault, which was the hotel quarantine, which leaked out, and that was 111 days, right?
Yeah.
Between those two lockdowns, it was 8 weeks. It was 2 months. All right, they're probably like, oh, we'll be fine. It's 2 months. I think we did lose restrictions in that 2 months, and it was like 4 days later that they locked it down harder than ever, right? Then between the big one, which ended on October 27th, went through to February without restrictions. So that was 15 weeks, which is not too bad, right? 15 weeks, decent amount of time. I think they finally lifted all restrictions on somewhere in the middle of December. And then Christmas and New Year's, I remember, were added restrictions for New Year's and Christmas for whatever reason it might have been. Then there was
I think that's because of Sydney. I think that's because of Sydney as to why they made those restrictions.
Possibly. So that was a 5-day lockdown, and it was another 14 weeks There was a 2-week lockdown, which had a 4-week break, and then another 2-week lockdown, which had a 9-day break before the most recent one, which went for 78 days. So that started on August 5th, and we got let out 2 days ago on Thursday, I think. So
That's Friday, 21st.
Friday, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So
Maybe I'm wrong. Could be wrong.
no, you're probably right, because I was never listening to the lockdowns anyway in Minecraft.
You know, it was 11:59 p.m. on Thursday, which basically means Friday.
Friday, yeah, okay. So yeah, I was never I never really listened because I'm not a child. I don't need a curfew. I don't need the government telling me how to live my life, and they can go fuck themselves. So nothing's really changed. That's why I don't really care when the lockdowns ended. But this whole everyone else is like, oh, you got to get home by 9 p.m. You can't be out after curfew.
Because, as we all know, COVID stops after 9 p.m.
Yeah, exactly. It just goes to sleep at 9 o'clock, right? It just goes to sleep. It doesn't infect anyone. It goes to bed like everyone else.
That's the funny part. With some of these restrictions, you can't even make the argument that they're for safety, because it's just there's no logical through line at all.
Very
all it is it's literally just revenue raising. That's all it is. That's all any of the policing in Victoria ever is. It's just revenue raising. None of it actually is to protect anyone. When it is to protect people, they don't do their job. So as far as I'm concerned, get rid of them. We don't need them. Like, if their job is handing out speeding tickets for people going 3 kilometers over the speed limit, fuck off. Just stop. Find a different job.
Well, I do have a question. Do they actually do, the serious parts of their job, crime and such? Or does that just never happen?
I'm sure when it comes to the ideological targets, they definitely are very efficient at their job.
I don't mean that. I mean real stuff.
The real, yeah, like there are the detectives and stuff who do the real job. They're not the beat cops, right? They're the actual cops. They're the ones who do the investigating, right? They actually go out, they do their job, they find, they abuse the new police powers to access people's phones and whatever, add and delete pictures, because that's a power that we have now.
That's just federal
democracy. Yeah, because they care. Because they care.
That law's only federal police, not state police.
For how long?
Yeah, it's federal police for Commonwealth crimes, it's like treason and stuff. It's what they can do that for.
Yeah. Okay. Because the government loves to stick to their word.
Yep.
So it's very much. And this is what I don't understand, is people could have just opened their doors. And I don't know whether it was on one of these that we were talking about this, but literally 1% of the entire population of Melbourne would overwhelm the Victorian police. If 1% of people just said, no, we're opening our businesses. If one town in metropolitan Melbourne was like, yeah, we're not closing our businesses anymore, there's nothing that they would have done, and that entire house of cards would have come crumbling down.
Well, you had on Friday and Saturday, you had compliance officers were out in force, getting to all the businesses to make sure they had signs up. I heard one story where the authorized authorities went to a business and forced the manager to stop serving a customer and instead put signs up about being vaccinated to come into the store.
That's insane. Like that's Gestapo shit. That's fucked. And they say, like, I firmly believe that Australia hasn't been a democracy for at least 20 years.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
And this is the other thing, is people seem to not understand that government works on consent of the governed.
Yeah.
And if we just withdrew our consent from the government and the police, there's nothing that they can do. What are they going to do? Shoot us?
But the social contract.
Well,
What
thing
social
is-
contract? Show me the paper I signed.
Okay, that's not the relevant part.
1996.
Yeah. Honestly,
You're right. They need a consent to govern, which is why they're so concerned about winning elections. Because if they don't win the election, they don't have the support of the people. They lose all authority because they have to then rely on the military and the police.
Well, unfortunately, the
And-
idea of consent of the government hasn't been in Australia's fund. It has been in fund of other countries. We didn't have that.
No.
There was way too much reliance on the government from the very beginning.
It doesn't
If-
need to be in the writings of the country. That's how it works.
Yeah, but is it like other people by and large? Do the people by and large hold that idea as well? Because I think our discussion previously has shown that no, they don't.
No, they don't. And it's because they're never told this. They're told, listen to the police, listen to the government, vote. It's important. It actually does something. No, it doesn't.
Eh,
When was the
I-
last time we voted? Hold on. Answer this question. When was the last time you voted for a leader in this country?
What is it, like a year or two
Unless-
ago?
Unless you're
Didn't
in the
much
premier,
point.
unless you're in the seat that the premier or prime minister or
Mhm.
opposition leader is running in, you don't vote for your party. You don't vote
Exactly.
for the national.
Exactly.
Or state
Your
leader.
votes go to a party. We have never in Australia voted for a leader. I think.
Yeah.
I'm almost certain that we have never ever voted for a leader in this country. It's always the party. Why do you think the party can just be like, oh, we don't like this guy anymore, get him the fuck out? Oh, is that something a democracy can do? I don't think so. You know, if someone voted for Kevin Rudd in 2007, right, and in 2009 nobody voted, but Julia Gillard is now the prime minister, that doesn't sound democratic to me.
It sounds more like the UK where the party just which gets the more votes it picks whoever they want. So it just the party does their
Our
thing.
system is so messed up. We get our lower house from the UK and our upper house from the USA.
Mm.
Our parliament is literally a hybrid of two different systems. Our courts are like the UK, our executive is
God,
like
no.
the UK, but our upper house is like the USA, and our constitution is based on the USA, not the UK one. Or there's no Bill of Rights. So it
Is
is
it
a
though?
really convoluted system that we have in Australia.
Because our constitution doesn't sound anything like the US, and it doesn't ensure any protections at all.
Unfortunately,
When it comes to
We
things like
have-
the party,
Implied everything. What the fuck is implied freedom of speech? Fuck off.
yeah.
Like,
It means that if
Implied.
the government is acting in good faith, but they're clearly not. So fuck you.
Like,
well,
I don't know,
I
the-
always go. Sorry, you go.
no, you go.
I was going to say, I always come back to, and I brought this up before in the past. What was it? The case 1908, the High Court of Australia, which at that time had three judges. All three judges helped write the Constitution, and you had a case Potter and Minahan, 1908, and O'Connor, who was who helped write the Constitution, basically said that you don't have the right to freedom of travel. You only have it if the government lets you have it. We don't have rights. We have privileges that are given us by the state.
Yeah, and I think if the education system in Australia, Victoria specifically, because I know the Victorian education system because I've spent 26 years in the fucking thing for a waste of time. Never should have gone to university. Don't go to fucking uni. Get a
I
trade.
did.
Be smart. But the Victorian education system does not inform you about any, like, we don't do civics. We don't know anything like that, right? I never learned civics.
I did civics in year 7, so that's year 6.
Mm.
I didn't.
You look a bit. So in year 6, you look a little bit at how they like Henry Parkes and early Australia and the Constitution and how the Senate and House of Reps works, and then in like year 7, if you're skilled as legal studies, you'll look at separation of powers, and that's about it. Really, that's all you have for civics.
Yeah, I didn't have anything, but I was just genuinely interested in history and such, so I just came across it anyway.
But yeah, so I don't know. Like
in America, they have a mandatory. In America, I think it's year 10. You have to take civics, so
Good.
you know your rights. You know how the government works in theory. We don't have anything like that, and we need something like that so people actually know what the government's all about.
Yeah.
People need to homeschool. That's what people need to do. People need to make pods. They need to make education pods where the parents swap days teaching them. That's what they need to do. They need to generate their own curriculum for what they think people are going to need. So,
but I do suppose now is as good time as I need to move on to my little adventure yesterday, because there's a bunch of things which are probably going to come out of that as well. So a couple of discussions. So I took a couple of notes. I'll be reading those out after I just give the general overview. So we had another street corner meeting recently. Last one was a month and some ago. It was with a federal candidate. I was the one guy to show up. The weather was absolute garbage, but I don't think that's the main reason. Yeah, back then I just generally discussed the federal police bill, the one referenced before, and some COVID things. And I mean, the discussion wasn't that useful. This time around, it was more fun. This time around, there were 3 consecutive events in different parks across the area. I went to the first 2. After that, I got just annoyed as fuck and left. But yeah, this time people were more active. So for the first meeting, there were 7 people. 4 of them, including myself, were mad as fuck about the mandates, which is the appropriate response. And 7 people showed up for the second one. And everyone else except for the 3 people and myself were there for other stuff, mostly roads, healthcare, local issues, with healthcare being the only slightly relevant part. But onto the interesting stuff. So it was from the Liberal Party, and there were 3 people there. There was the candidate for the local area. There was one of the MPs. I believe he's responsible for trade and investment. And there was their assistant, who was a smug asshole. Well, more on that later. And I came in the middle of a discussion on COVID, essentially. From what I understood, the other people who were there for the COVID stuff, there was a nurse and her husband, and also one more woman who was, looking into the COVID situation and was concerned about the mandates. And they essentially held the same position to mine, as in the mandates are bullshit, as is most of the science peddled on COVID by the government. And now moving on to the specific notes, which I've taken. So the candidate, the person who people were supposed to be there for, she was okay, but mostly defaults into mainstream media talking points, including things like vaccines being massively effective, the approval by the TJ, and the unvaccinated being the majority of hospitalizations. Mm-hmm. And all of these things were immediately countered by myself and others, so that didn't go anywhere. The MP was mostly evasive on the subjects. His main response was along the lines of, "We'll be deferring to national policy." So essentially, the state government isn't going to, enforce any additional restrictions, but whatever the federal government says, we'll do. What's next? Yeah, a couple of things which regularly came up was the health advisor being an unelected bureaucrat who, and essential response was, well, this person advising the government on COVID policy, yeah, they're not going to be removed even if you vote out the current party. Even if you vote them out of power, that person is likely to stay there. So the response essentially was, yeah, it's an unelected bureaucrat, so what?
Yeah, the answer was suck shit, because that's the answer to any question in Australia to people.
Essentially, it was. A couple of more things. The MP, he suggested that the government measures will taper off by December, and was confident that the state of emergency won't be extended, which I'm not certain of at all. And even then, I mean, a couple of things that he mentioned, that yeah, most of the restrictions will be gone like after the country opens up, but there still might be local lockdowns. There won't be state lockdowns, but they might be local small lockdowns. So fucking useless on that account as well. And there's no reason for them not to go back on their word anyway. Then a couple more things. So some of the things the nurse mentioned was that around 20 to 30% of medical staff are still unvaccinated, according to her knowledge.
Wait, how much?
20 to 30%.
No shit.
And that's per hospital.
That's high.
Yeah.
That is high.
And since the mandates come into effect in 2 weeks, I mean, once again, according to her, but she would know since she's the one who's going to get fired essentially because of that. Yeah, that's going to cripple the healthcare by quite a lot. And yeah. Then a couple of other things. The MP mentioned a target goal of 80% of the state being vaccinated, which, as I wrote just in my notes, fucking arbitrary. But yeah, like essentially all the people who were there based on the COVID mandate stuff, they all just came away with, yeah, I'm not fucking voting for you anymore.
Good.
Which is nice to see.
That is good.
And one last thing, the assistant of these two politicians, yeah. So that guy was just a smart piece of shit. He didn't do much during the conversation, but the couple times he tried to interject, it was mostly essentially just debate bro tactics from online. Well, under what conditions would you consider taking the vaccine? Under what conditions would you change your opinion? And my answer and the answer of everyone else was, okay, this and this. No mandates, independent reviews into government policy, and there was one other thing which long-term studies. Like at least those three things, and that shut him up nicely. And then
Good.
Yeah, and at the very end of the second event, when I was trying to clear up some stuff, basically after everyone started leaving, he just came up to me and was like, well, this stuff is just your opinion, man. And when I was like, well, do you have the evidence to support that? And he's like, well, yeah. Do you have your evidence? I was like, yes. And his response was, well, it's on the internet. You can find yourself. But basically, he just shut down the conversation and was like, fuck you. In slightly more polite terms, very slightly.
He was he liberal, correct?
Yeah, they were all liberal. And yeah, the only other important thing to mention is that I actually did manage to get a straight answer from the MP on the government policy regarding COVID. And he did clarify to me at the end, so at least he did that much. And it was as follows: the state government will not implement any more restrictions than basically anything outside of national policy they're not going to do, but they're also not going to implement any measures to stop private business from discriminating against you based on vaccine status. So when I brought up that idea, he was like, yeah, we're not doing that. Yeah. So the full conclusion is the state government of the Liberal Party on the state level in South Australia is fucking useless, as expected. But at least they proved it.
Not surprised.
We should take South Australia over, make it Ancapistan.
That's what Tasmania is for.
No, fuck Tasmania. Shit weather.
I also want to take a moment to welcome Madamoose to the stream as well. Hey, mate.
Welcome.
He's saying nothing.
You see there?
G'day. Sorry, are you able to hear me okay, guys?
Yeah, we can now.
Yep.
I'll be back in a second.
Sorry, guys.
Bit of an echo, but we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, no, I just thought I'd jump on and just check out some of the things that you guys are saying. So, yeah, well done. Job well done, guys. Yeah, the message needs to get out. So, yeah, sorry, I wasn't actually expecting to be jumping on. But, yeah, no, look, it's really good to be able to see that work that you guys are doing. Just halfway in the process of kind of tidying up the house because we're shipping off overseas. We're going to Central America.
How'd you get out? So
Everyone wants to.
how's the government letting you get out?
So that's the thing. So you can actually seek an exemption, and you just need to go onto the website, Border Force, and you can actually apply for an exemption on the basis that you sign a declaration saying that you intend to leave for more than 3 months. So you can jump onto the website. You basically need to get a statutory declaration signed up by like a doctor, pharmacist, or something like that, saying that they're witnessing you signing the document. And yeah, you just need to be able to show proof. So we're actually going through some attorney over in Central America, whereby they got a letter written for us, basically saying that this is our client. We're intending to be able to have them start the visa process. And that got approved pretty quickly as well, actually. So only within about 3 days, roughly, it'll get approved or declined. So the media seems to put up this big wall of, oh no, you're stuck. No, not really. As far as we're concerned, I mean, and this is all the arrangements that we've made. You could apply for it, an exemption, if you're leaving for more than 3 months. It will then, get measured, and if it's, it's approved, I guess. I mean, we haven't left yet, so watch this space, I suppose. But as far as we're aware, we've shipped off everything in the shipping container, and it's already heading there for 3 months. But we'll get there from about the 3rd of November onwards. So watch this space. If I have any issues, if I have any issues,
Guatemala?
Close, nearby.
Costa Rica?
One of those areas there. Yeah, getting there, getting warm.
Costa Rica is the one that seems to be pretty good.
Everyone seems to say that. Yeah, that's right. But again,
Costa Rica and Guatemala.
Yeah. Those areas there seem to be pretty good. So we'll be very nearby in the vicinity. But mostly it was basically about just trying to get out as soon as we really can, because who knows how long the window closes on us. I mean, you're not wrong. Costa Rica seems like the most obvious one, and everyone seems to recommend it and thinks it's a wonderful place. So we'll be nearby there and very close to there. If we need to kind of skip across the border to there. And I know others as well that are considering Central America. So that's the plan so far. I'm hoping to kind of document the process. So once we actually arrive there, so I've got myself, my wife, 2 kids.
Make it
once we actually arrive there.
Make it a series for this channel.
Look, if I can, I guess, so anything to be able to help others. And again, it seems to be, very surprising to everyone, because, I was looking at private jets as well at one stage, basically saying, like, how do I get out of here? But you can book a ticket, and you can even use that as evidence to be able to say, look, it's a one-way ticket, we're not coming back. We'll keep you posted, I suppose.
I'm sure the government's glad to have more of a scorn.
Look, I'm not too sure. Well, look, I mean, if you don't agree with it, they probably want us out of here so we don't cause any more hassle. But no, look, I intend to be, doing whatever I can to be able to say to people, look, come over and take all your capital with you. I don't know how much they would care about that, but you would imagine that they would. Things just seem a bit too chaotic here, too crazy. We've been locked up for 2 years now, guys, right? And it's just no end in sight. So, look, maybe things will come good by themselves, as everyone kind of cautiously, optimistically thinks. I'm a little bit, after looking at recent events, I think that's not going to be the case. So, look.
Yeah, it's time to leave. It's time to leave Australia. This country's fucked.
Yeah, well, where are you going to go?
Central America.
Let's cross the ditch to be under dictator Ardern.
Well, that's the thing. So basically, my way of looking at it is anywhere besides Australia, Canada, and New Zealand is better than where we are right now.
New Zealand isn't better. They lock down over one case, and it's the whole country.
Except for that.
Yeah,
except for
she is a psychopath. She is a psycho. she's worse than Daniel Andrews is. And she's like, and you know what the worst part is? Because she's attractive and she speaks nicely. People are just like, oh, she's not a bad person. She's not an authoritarian. She's doing the right thing.
Yeah, I question the attractive part of that.
Also, you also got the gender card, the gender card there as well, which she can also play. In the media, you can play.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a question for you from the chat, if you don't mind, Madam Ace, just before you go. Someone's asked, are there any flights to get out of Australia right now?
Yeah, there are. So we were able to look at a few of them. We had to do a few stopovers in the US. So while I'm there, I'm not sure. I might see if I can kind of
get yourself a gun.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Well, the country that we're going to looks pretty promising in terms of maybe setting up in Pakistan. It's basically only got a population of 4 million people. You're allowed to own semi-automatics. This country also has it's got no Federal Reserve based there. What other perks? Oh, it looks like they're going to be passing a bill probably early next year, potentially. That means that even cryptocurrencies will be accepted as legal tender. So no centralized banking. There's 62 banks in this country, so it's decentralized. It seems to be somewhat, thus far, of an autonomous area, or at least it has the great potential to be that. Look, while we're still going to try to keep nimble, it offers a lot of decent prospects, I'll say.
I know that El Salvador, they've got crypto as a proper currency now.
It was Guatemala.
I think they changed it a couple of months ago.
It was Guatemala.
That's true. El Salvador, I know, has, that's right, and possibly Guatemala might be as well. But I think there was some loopholes with El Salvador, being that you have to register all your Bitcoin or something to that effect.
Well, there was one that you get a citizenship if you have an X amount of investment in Bitcoin, or I think it was if you have one Bitcoin, they'll give you citizenship.
Wow. Okay.
Something like that.
We considered El Salvador, but then I've also got 2 small kids and a family. There is the risk of crime rates there, so we went for a country that's potentially we could skip to another country if we really get dire, but otherwise it seems somewhat stable politically, and I think global interests would probably have a desire to keep it stable as well. Like if you make the masses too upset, it could cause havoc in the area. So look, it's not exactly going to be our new home. I've painted it to the kids that went for a long holiday. So if something if we can't get any work or something like that, we could at least hold out there longer due to the cost of living being so much cheaper as opposed to what we could here in Australia. So that's my mentality behind it. Sorry if there is that echo, because again we've basically cleared out all of our furniture. It's all in a shipping container as we speak, on its way there.
Well, if you can't find a job, just walk north and get across Mexico-US border, and then you'd be set up to be fine there as well.
Yeah.
Bingo. Yeah, that's right. So look, we're basically just going to be using it as a launching point until the fog settles and we know where the world is basically standing. So we're looking at ways to be able to extract all of our super as well. We've sold our property, which I don't know if you guys have been keeping an eye on. Property prices around the world, they're going crazy. So we basically bought this property about 2 years back. Close to doubling our money in only just 2 years. And I think it's because and look, I mean, I'm not going to be complaining about that because money is effectively free right now. Anyone just looks at the repayments and they go, oh yeah, I can make that today, not realizing that if it goes up about 3% or so, they're going to be sunk, and then the government seizes their property, and then we need properties to be given to us. It's our right. Blah blah blah. Who knows what language they'll use along those lines. So anyway, so we put our property on the market. It sold within the week. We had 3 buyers lined up. So look, if the market's even more overcooked, I can't see it lasting for much longer. Sold all my shares, which is a bit heartbreaking because crafted it for a while, but we basically just need to try to stay as liquid as possible to try to ride things out for maybe a few years. But while I'm there, my focus is going to be trying to look for ways that we can get other Aussies out. By the way, guys, I can adopt somebody that's under the age of 26 if you've got some financial means. I'm happy to welcome you as a son or a daughter.
I am 26. Can you adopt me?
Look, if you honestly, if you want to kind of go down that path, I think I can get you over on my visa and you can fly out by yourself. And I'll say, yep, you're my son. I'll legally adopt you. Look, I know it sounds crazy, right? I know it sounds crazy, but if you guys are sincere and say, look, I can afford the trip over there, DM me directly. Whatever I can do to help somebody else, if it's one person, two people, I don't know, but if you have some meager means, I don't know, like 20, 30 grand or something like that, I'll entertain the idea, I guess. Well, look, I don't know, whatever you might be able to sort out. If you sell your car, or if you cash in your car.
I sold my car to go and exchange to the US last year.
Well, there you go.
Right. 2019.
Well, look, 2019. All right. Well, look, I mean, I don't know. Yeah. So it might be a bit tricky, but look, I mean, I don't know. I'll offer that out as well.
Interested.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yes, people in chat are very interested in doing this.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. Like, put my details in Twitter, I guess, or something like that. Or if you want some way, reach out to Liberty Down Under. He can reach me, I'm sure.
Yes.
So somebody's actually going, look, I want to consider this. I've never done this before. I've never abandoned the country and kind of fled as a semi-refugee status. So look, first time for everything. That's right. So I'm learning as I go, trying to learn as much as I can.
I'm going to contact the U.S. Embassy and see if there's any claim to asylum, just because it is caste discrimination, basically. Like they categorized us, and now they're discriminating in Victoria based on that. So I'm going to see if there's any legs to it and see if they've actually had anyone inquire about it, because it seems like a ridiculous thing, seeking asylum from Australia and the US. But like, I'm dead serious about it. Like, I'm going to actually ask them, and I'll probably get laughed off the phone, but I'm going to ask them.
Yeah, this is another thing, by the way, which came out of the street corner meeting, is that the one straight answer I did get is essentially medical discrimination is fine. Like, that's essentially, and you can essentially take that quote straight from the MP, because that's basically what he said.
Okay, but that's not what that's not the only thing. My politics. Thing, hold on. My politics refuse coercion. If they're discriminating because I refuse to be coerced, well, that's political discrimination, and that's a genuine asylum claim.
Mm-hmm. Well, then it is both of those things. But I'm just thinking, where can the argument be advanced from here? Because essentially, how many people are going to be moved by by an MP outright stating that medical discrimination is fine? Because I'm just wondering if I get that message out, to whatever extent I can, is it going to change anything? I think it might some.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
So with that religious argument, can that also be used to get out of voting as well?
I think we should just write on ballots, "You do not speak for me," and submit it. Because if enough people write that on a ballot, then it becomes a vote. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Discount 30% of the vote if 30% of the people write that on the ballot?
Yeah,
hell no. That's a vote of no confidence.
They can't count it though, so
they're going to discount it.
See, but this is where the Australian system is ridiculous again. Why can't we say no? You're all shit cunts.
Yeah, but you can. It's not going to count though. That's the thing.
Exactly. So what's the point of voting?
Well, what's the point of not voting for anyone then? That's the real question. Because
the reason why we have mandatory voting is because it creates apathy, and that gives the government guaranteed votes. People who don't care will vote either Labor. People who don't care will vote Labor or Liberal.
Service guarantees citizenship. Make them serve the country to vote.
The Heinlein solution.
The original reason why we got mandatory voting, or at least the official reason, was because we had low voter turnouts. Because of the World War I, we had low voter turnouts, which makes no sense to me because Queensland brought it in 1915. the war had been going on for like a year, so I don't know how that affected voter turnouts.
Yeah.
But by the mid 1920s,
How
every
does that
state
work?
and yeah, I don't get it because if it's because of lower vote turnouts, that's during the war.
Yeah.
So
What?
it doesn't. In effect, that's the very start of the war. The reason they gave is because we had World War One, and then after that we had low voter turnouts. By the mid
Because
20s,
you
every
had
jurisdiction.
less people.
By the mid 20s, every jurisdiction had mandatory voting, and that's how the reason they gave is because it's meant to be temporary, just to get that vote.
So is
Yeah.
income tax.
Yep, it's meant to be temporary, and they said we're just doing it so we can get that voter turnout up, and then they kept it since then because it's basically a source of revenue and consent, and it brings apathy.
There's
guaranteed
nothing
votes.
more permanent than a temporary government policy.
Well, if we ended, it is temporary. So, the prophecy will come true.
I was debating someone on Twitter yesterday who was saying, we can trust Dan Andrews. He's going to only make permanent. He's going to only make temporary emergency powers. They're not going to be permanent. They'll be temporary only. And
how long before did they become permanent? That's the question you have to ask. How long does it take for you to get convinced?
According to David Limbrick, who's Lib Dem MP, they're going to pass a mandatory bill, a bill for permanent emergency powers in
I don't know.
January, February next year.
Cool.
So originally that was being made with the crossbench. So he needs 3 seats to get a majority in the upper house. So he was working with the Greens crossbencher, Reason Party crossbencher Fiona Patten, who is an absolute arsehole, and someone else.
Just call them out. Hold on. It was an independent, a Greens, and a Liberal. The Reason Party. Sorry.
Yeah. As people in chat point out, haven't we seen this before?
And then the problem is that he's then managed to force out 4 senators. So what he's done is he's basically because they had that bill, you need to have the vaccine to vote in Parliament, or to be on parliamentary grounds, but you can't vote from long distance. So he forced out a Liberal, both Lib Dems and an Independent, forcing out 4. That gives him a majority to pass the bill in his own right because it doesn't need a crossbench.
So it says, this is the story from The Age. It says Andrews' government secretly negotiating a permanent pandemic laws to replace state of emergency. It says 3 crossbenchers to introduce specific pandemic laws that would permanently replace state of emergency powers.
Do they mention what those are?
Hold on, I'll share the screen so we can.
Yeah, sure.
Can you see it?
There you go. Yep, it's coming up now for us.
Okay. So, it says demands made by powerful crossbenchers in return for their support include a requirement the police record the racial appearance of people
Oh, for
they
fuck's
stop
sake.
or fine for breaching health directives.
Yeah.
That'd be the Greens. That'll be the Greens.
Disadvantaged Victorians would also be exempted to or pay reduced fines if found contravening restrictions. What the fuck is a disadvantaged Victorian?
Oh, I can
define.
I can tell you. You know exactly where this is going. It's going to be the progressive stack in law.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially equal enforcement of laws. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Jesus
So it says the government will be emboldened by the impending return of work of Premier Daniel Andrews, who on Saturday night released a photo showing himself receiving the first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. Wow, nobody cares. Mr. Andrews, who fractured a vertebra and 5 ribs and narrowly avoided permanent spinal cord damage, will return to work. So that was in June. So state of emergency powers laws have been active in Victoria since last March. That's March 2020, when the first lockdown started, which is March 30th.
Styles, it is now. They're trying to bring it in.
And it's funny that it's a 14-day quarantine when it was meant to be 14 days and to stop the spread. State of emergency laws yet active allows authorities to enforce a range of public health commands, which means that they can put you into lockdown for any reason, any time, for any day. So basically what we're going to see is the environmental crisis is so bad, lockdowns. That's what we're going to see. Mark my fucking words.
Yeah, we always knew this was coming because, they just need another justification, and the end of the world is just the perfect justification you need, just as the pandemic.
Hey, so Jack, take a random guess at who the third. Take a random guess at who the third member of the upper house is that's voting with Dan Andrews on emergency powers. Take a random guess. Yeah, take a random guess of who that third one is from the crossbench. A certain independent who used to be Labour.
Well, it says here, animal justice is what the other one was. So it says the pandemic legislation. The pandemic legislation will be permanently shaped by the demands of 3 upper house crossbenchers. The Animal Justice Party MP Andy Medic. Why the fuck is he?
What the fuck is the Animal Justice Party?
Pandemic. Why is the Animal Justice Party drafting pandemic laws? Right?
Because it's a unified mass of leftists.
The Reason Party, right? The Reason Party, who I'm pretty sure Fiona Patton has been guaranteed a spot in the Labour Party, if I'm not
Libertarian left.
Yes,
they're fucking mocking us now. The Reason Party.
Who votes with Dan Andrews she votes with Labour on almost every topic, but she's apparently libertarian. So
I'm pretty sure she's leaving the Reason Party and joining Labour, and she's been guaranteed a position, which I would not be surprised.
She is currently the leader of the Reason Party. I despise her because she claims to be libertarian, but her actions are statist. Whereas at least with Dan Andrews, his actions and his words are both statist. But her words are libertarian, but her actions are statist.
Yeah.
Is Andy Medic the leader of the Animal Justice Party?
That is the correct statement. There is no liberal left.
No,
libertarian.
I don't think he is.
But so that party exists entirely for animal welfare.
Yeah, Bruce.
That's all it is.
Good name. Bruce Poon is the leader of Animal Justice Party. Yeah, so it's basically animal justice, fake libertarian, and the Greens. The Greens leader, no less.
So three irrelevant scumbags. Well, I wish they were irrelevant, but yeah.
So they are drafting permanent pandemic laws to fuck over Victorians permanently. So that's fantastic. And we are going to see that's on a state level. So we're going to see lockdowns for whatever reason. Let's say these freedom protests continue, right? We'll see, and it's going to be back to this idea of beating down Victorians, beating down their spirit, right? Is what's going to happen will be there will be a protest. It'll get pretty rowdy. The cops will go in, shoot some people, and then they'll lock down the state because we're being rowdy. They're literally going to start using lockdowns as a punishment for going against the government. That's what this sounds like.
It surprised me.
That is what this sounds like.
Let's see how that goes because you know what the consequence of that is going to be. They're literally going to incite terrorism. That's it.
I'm no comment.
Well, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm saying that's what's going to happen.
It is. They brought it on themselves. They're bringing it on themselves. They're asking for it. Don't attack innocent civilians, though. Only politicians, and even then, only in Minecraft.
The problem is with when you have violent protests and violent resistance,
it loses support.
You antagonize the people, whereas non-violent, you do have more success. But you do have a greater chance of success against the government. If you're non-violent, it's not going to be as effective against the government, but it'll be more effective in convincing the people that you've got the right cause.
Of course. But this is the other thing, right? You don't need everyone to be on your side.
No,
you only need
no,
about 15%. You only need about 15% to stand up, and then everything changes, because the other 85% just fall in line, because that's what they do. They fall in line.
And also
right?
with how much the information
They
is being
are
suppressed,
the followers.
yeah.
Right? The people who would be dissuaded, the ones who read the mainstream media, these people are the followers. They're not the ones who stand up and fight. They're the ones who just follow the norm.
Well,
They
and also
are,
the mainstream.
they are the
mainstream,
blue pills. That's
Yeah,
what
and the
they
main-
are.
and the mainstream media will never willingly cover those protests unless
No.
they can make it look good for themselves, as in for the government, or unless that it's going to be something that they can't ignore. These are the only two cases where they will willingly cover the protests.
Yeah. And I think, and I love this quote by JFK. It's those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. And if the Victorian government continues down the path that they are going, they are asking for violence. And we saw this.
Well, yeah, they are. That's what I said.
We've already seen it. They beat in the doors of the Union. Like, we've already seen it. And it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, escalation, hopefully, because the outcome, the other option is worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's either and this is the thing. You either sit by or you stand up. And if you sit by, there's only one result that's going to happen, and it's not going to be.
Or you
good.
live long enough to become a villain.
But like you're only going to see more heartache. We're going to see the government take more control, more power from the people, and this is the thing. We have the power, and politicians need to be reminded that they serve us. And Victorian politicians really need to be reminded of this.
Also, another thing which just came to mind, and it's one thing I want to bring up. So during the street corner meeting, one of the most fascinating things that happened is one of the comebacks from the Liberal candidate was, well, do you think the doctors and politicians are intentionally misleading people? Do you think that they're doing those bad things out of malice? And there were actually two answers to that. One, it's not the doctors being listened to, and the second thing, the second answer was it doesn't have to be malice. It just has. It could be money, arrogance, power hungriness, a lot of other things.
But Daniel Andrews, it's incompetence. I think.
But the immediate thing people default to, well, if you say this thing is bad, you must think that the people doing it are evil. And no, that's not the only reason they could be doing it.
It's not the only one, though.
No, that's a good solution, but we have to get a bit creative to do that.
I don't know. I just think that the Australian political class has lost the plot, and they need to be dragged back into line.
Yeah, I mean, many have.
And this is the other thing and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the Australian people, specifically the Victorian people, because even though Brisbane isn't locked down, people went out in volumes way higher than they did in Victoria, right? Specifically in Victoria, people need to, and I hate saying this, but they really do need to wake the fuck up. Because right now, we are blindly marching towards a cliff.
Yeah. Also, another thing is,
it's as simple as that.
I'm not sure how much this this also probably demonstrates the apathy just a bit, but of the people who showed up to the street corner meetings, all of them, well, as far as I could tell, all of them except for me, and they were all over 40 years old. It's the people who, even those who showed up for COVID, to protest against COVID things, they all were older, and it just seems like, yeah, the apathy is also in the younger generation as well, because yeah, they
It's
don't-
not though. It's been co-opted and directed by ideologues. That's the thing. There is no apathy in the younger generations. It's just directed towards ruin. Basically, it's just they're hardlining straight for ruin, and then the rest are just blindly marching towards the same goal.
the ones who are activists, yeah, but everyone else, they either disengage or they're just left alone, like
Yeah.
me and others who are like the only ones looking at the madness and going like, guys, what is that? What the hell are you all doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, we're in an hour 10.
Yeah.
Are we going to
Any
continue,
concluding
or are we gonna
remarks?
call it there? I think I said all I needed to say.
What have we covered everything? Anything left to talk
I
about?
think so. I don't know. Does the people watching want to hear anything?
Yeah, anyone got any questions? I'll put that in the chat and ask them. See if we have any questions from the audience.
Not many, only helpful suggestions on how to screw the government.
But I did have one question for you, Jack. Based on the response we're seeing right now from the Australian people in Victoria, what do you think we're going to see at the election next year?
Oh, Daniel Andrews will win.
Oh, for God's sake.
Nothing will change. They'll vote for Daniel Andrews because they've been told to.
I love how Sky News is predicting or at least Paul Murray was predicting a swing towards the Liberals for the next election. He
Which
said
isn't going
that,
to mean anything.
Wait, in Victoria?
yeah, Australia wide.
Okay. Because that's not going to happen in Victoria because Matthew Guy is a weasel. Fuck that guy. He's an idiot, right? And as you said before, the opposition party in Victoria is the Liberal Democrats.
It is just the Lib Dems and Catherine Cummings, is it?
Yeah, the
Also-
independent, yeah.
Also, I got a question.
No.
Is One Nation any good on these subjects? Because I think on the vaccines
Don't
vaccine mandates,
even look at One Nation.
Why?
Fuck the United Australia Party. Fuck One Nation. Fuck them both. Like they are preference sponges for the Liberal Party. Do not vote for them.
One Nation is the most authoritarian party in Australia that's conservative. The fact that they're anti-lockdown is really weird, but on everything else, they're bad. They're protectionist, pro-war. They are.
Protectionism's not a
Are they
bad
pro-war?
thing.
yeah,
Protectionism's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not. And
Being pro-war is bad, but again, they're Liberal Party sponge, like they're preference sponges for the Liberal Party. They should be last after the Liberal Party, the Labor Party, and the Greens. Everyone's card at elections should be Greens at the bottom, followed by Labor and Liberal. You interchange Labor and Liberal because it really doesn't matter, right? Everyone's card should have.
if your seat's Liberal, put Liberal down the bottom. If your seat's Labor, put Labor down the bottom, just because that's the current MP. And
Yeah.
then you put the other one just above them, and then above them One Nation.
Greens
and
always
then above
last.
them.
Greens always lost.
I always
Always.
put Greens last.
correct.
You want to vote for independents that aren't. Who's the progressive chick from Sydney?
The
girl
one
is-
that sued Laneham.
No, that's Sarah Hanson Young.
Fuck that bitch.
I think it's the chick who got Malcolm Turnbull's seat, who's really progressive.
I have no idea.
So independents, SFFP, which is Shooters, Fishers, Farmers, Lib Dems. That's all we have really. They're the
Yeah.
least bad options.
And again, United Australia Party should not be looked at. Craig Kelly is a Liberal Party MP. Just because he's left doesn't mean anything. Craig Kelly was criticizing Palmer, and now he runs the party. It is the biggest psyop I've ever seen from the Liberal Party. It is ridiculous. The United Australia Party is just a preference sponge for the Liberal Party. Craig Kelly is a fuckwit. You should only be looking at independent parties or just flub your vote. If you don't know who to vote for, just don't vote. Right? That's that's basically like it really doesn't matter at the end of the day because the major parties are going to win anyway, right?
Well,
So if you're going to vote for the Liberal Democrats, the shooter fishers farmers, vote for people who believe in actual individual liberties. Because if you don't, we're only going to see the same. More of the same, more of the same, more of the same. Then the other reason that I say don't vote for the United Australia Party is because they are very topical. They are a party faced around lockdowns. And now lockdowns are ending. They have no use. They are useless. Their entire platform is lockdowns and COVID restrictions. What are they going to do when that's done? They're going to vote in favor of liberal policies, and we do not need that.
well, my question is: would at least trying to draw away votes from the main two parties do anything?
No, because it just gets funneled to them anyway. Because ranked choice.
Preference, but it sends a message. If we see a swing towards minor parties, it sends a message to the government.
Yeah, that was kind of the idea.
It sends a message to up the minimum membership requirements and get rid of them. That's what it tells them to do.
The stance I take is votes for SFFP and especially Lib Dems. We can't win through politics. As an ANCAP, I don't believe we can get our freedom through politics. But
Drop the
my
ideology
stance
for a
on
moment.
my stance on it is that if we preference SFFP and Lib Dems, then they will get a high proportion of the vote. Then they'll get more media coverage. People who actually care about politics are going to go look up what they stand for, and we could win some converts to at least to classical liberalism. Even they might not become more hardcore libertarians like myself and Jack as anarchists.
I'd be fine with that. Classical liberals, pretty good.
Yeah, I'd rather have a nation of classical liberals than I would have a small group of hardcore anarchists and agorists. I think we need to win the cultural war. That's if we vote for Lib Dems and SFP, people will try and find out what they stand for.
I don't disagree with the voting thing. I disagree with the thing before. I think that if everyone just minded their own fucking business, we'd have no issues.
Yeah, also, I'm looking at the SFP,
unfortunately, we're in
SFP
Australia.
website. Yeah, I'm looking at the SFP website, and do they have any presence in what states do they have a presence?
They're very New South Wales and Queensland centric because that's where all the shooters are.
But they don't have much. Yeah, there's also the Murray-Darling Basin as well.
Yeah,
but they don't have much support in Queensland though, because we've got Katter.
Yeah, well, Bob Katter should fold his party and leave. He's a fucking idiot. As memeable as he is and as lovable as he is, he really needs to either merge with the shooter fishers farmers or just leave, because Queensland fuck. This is why just don't vote. Fuck voting. Fuck it. It's the worst. Mandatory voting is shit. It just sucks because it forces you to have a choice when I don't want to vote for any of them because I don't want to give my consent to any of them.
Also, the least bad option to do the stuff anyway.
You have to go it on your weekend, line up and vote. So you got to use your time.
At least you get a sausage that you have to pay for, I guess. Don't even give it to you for free.
No, but you do get flyers.
Fucks.
You do get flyers, which you can use as kindling for fires.
No, that's true. They do cut down a bunch of trees to give flyers that end up in the bin anyway. I will say this: the shooter fishers farmers.
Do that.
Yeah, it's hilarious, isn't it? The shooter fishers farmers have better green policies than the Greens.
Yeah.
Like, the shooter fishers farmers should focus more on those progressives that only care about the environment and get them over. Because it is a target market that they could win.
Lib Dems can pull the right. SFFP can pull the left.
Yes. Yeah, and then they should form a coalition and take government.
Don't vote for the Reason Party.
Yeah, I'm currently signing up to volunteer for Liberal Democrats. Give me a second.
Wait, can you put that comment up? Can you put the one here? We need to start an underground movement. Can you put that one up? Chuck this here because that's actually a really good point. It's the third one. Just came through.
Yeah, I found it. There we go.
There we go. So this is actually a really good point. Basically, it's counter-economics.
I'll quickly read it out for the audio only listeners.
Mhm.
So the statement is: we need to start an underground movement separate from the government and political parties.
100% agree, and this is counter-economics. This is growing your own food. This is starting, and yeah, basically, it's and as associated with communism as the word is, communes are the solution, right? Communes are the solution.
Even Hopper said that, and he's about as conservative as conservative libertarian as he can get, conservative social values, libertarian economic values, and he said that.
The only question here is
he's to the right. He's on the right, and he said that.
The only question here is how would you organize that sort of stuff? Because
you don't. You just have a mutual agreement with a bunch of people, and you start doing it. You people think too much about it. You don't need any agreements. You just need a bunch of people who agree, and then you go and do it.
I'm talking about particulars, communication, hierarchy, being able to organize things. Because as much as you want to, you'll never get rid of hierarchy. It's simply the most efficient way of doing things.
Who cares about efficiency? We're not looking to start wars. Just focus.
Okay.
Just focus on your own and your own inner circle, and that's all you need.
Yeah, and others won't leave you alone. You'll need to deal with that eventually.
Yeah, guns.
If you have any, if you have enough people, maybe.
Yeah,
but that's what I'm talking about.
Secede from the country and import your own. Problem solved.
Every man a gun.
Yeah, Victorian Department of Guns. Free gun when you turn 18.
What I'm saying, you'll need a hell of a lot more people and guns, and to get those, you'll need those things I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
When you turn 18, the government gives you a how to vote card and a gun.
Yes. Free AR-15 and a training session with your voting card.
Wait, are you shooting at your voting card? What's the idea?
Speaking of Bob Catter said a few years ago, what we need to do is we need to, get all Australian high school boys have to be trained in using weapons.
Oh, hell yeah.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
However, he then went and said women should be trained in doing house chores. So he ruined it there, but the first part was good.
Okay, I don't see a problem, but
it's almost like Bob Catter's comments. He's like, "Oh, gay marriage is fine, but Queenslanders get killed by crocodiles." the personality change was on a dime.
Every 3 months, someone in North Queensland dies from a crocodile attack. That's more important.
Guys, I have a better suggestion. How about both get gun training and household chore training?
There you go. Share the
with that.
See, this is actually a really good point. Artistic expression is a very powerful tool for underground movements. It is. It really is. If we can get music made that thinks like this, people will come on board. And one thing that I've noticed is a lot of people in the liberty movement or space or whatever you want to call it, listen to metal. You notice that?
That's great.
Mm.
I also prefer synths,
that's very interesting.
Because metal has always had that fuck the authority kind of thing going for it. Admittedly, it has been more left-wing, Rage Against the Machine and that sort of stuff, but
Rage for the Machine, I think you mean.
It's Rage on behalf.
Yeah.
Did you know that they had a concert which not only required vaccinations to get in, like full ID card checked, and they were singing, "Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me."
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
After going to this concert where you had to show papers to get in, there is nothing more ironic than that. That is the pinnacle. That is the actual pinnacle.
Correct.
All right. Do you want to quickly go through these questions we have in the chat and then finish up?
Mm-hmm.
because we have a few.
Do you want to do the first one, the Prime Minister one?
Yes, I'm trying to find it.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, the question was, which Prime Minister do you hate the most?
It says, who's the most fucked Prime Minister in your opinion is the actual question.
There we go, found it.
Do you want to go first?
It's a good question. I'm thinking, actually, do you want to do the worst Labour and the worst Liberal?
There's too many Liberals to pick.
I'm almost thinking Menzies.
I'm not going to answer the question because I could give less of a fuck about previous prime ministers in Australia. I barely give a fuck about the ones that are picked already. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Scott Morrison is an illegitimate prime minister. Like, he's abandoned his job. So fuck him.
Like,
he's probably he's probably the one that I would pick, Scott Morrison. Like, he does not deserve the job. He is not suited for the job. The fact that, like, yeah, no, my answer would be Scott Morrison. He's fucking inept.
The reason why, so I'll go through the reasons why I don't like Menzies, then we'll go to you, Victor, and see what you got. See what who your least favorite is. So there.
I don't really have an opinion because I don't know that much of Australian political history. So if you'll forgive me, I don't have an answer.
Well, who's your least favorite that you've been in Australia under?
I just didn't pay attention, man. I'm sorry to say. I mean, just for the COVID stuff, I'm going to pick Morrison, but yeah, that's my only criteria since that's when I started paying attention.
So the reason why I don't like Menzies is he was elected as he was elected once in before World War One, then was forced out, then ran again in 1949 to 1966. He's the reason Australia got involved in Malaysia, in Korea, in Indonesia, in Vietnam. So all those are his fault. Plus he was very much he's basically the leading figure of the Menzies family. And when it comes to politics, so his family has a long history of being involved in Victorian politics, both at a state level and a federal level. On top of that, he appointed his cousin to the High Court, and his brother was the Crown Solicitor of Victoria. So one of the highest-ranking lawyers in Victoria was his brother, and his cousin he made a judge. Which is,
Yeah, I remember seeing
nepotism.
Yeah, I remember seeing a tweet from you in response to someone saying, "Well, Australia doesn't have political dynasties." Yeah,
yes, that was Claire. So did you see that, Jack? Claire Lehman from
what you do
Quillette,
this time? Fuck's sake.
She said that Australia does not have political families.
Is she fucked in the head? Did she fall down and sustain brain damage in the last 2 years? What the fuck is wrong with her?
So I went, you've got the Menzies who are just covered, his uncles and father were involved in state politics. He made his cousin a judge in the High Court, which is our version of the US Supreme Court. Then you've got the Palaszczys, and Anastasia, the Queensland Premier. She inherited her seat from her father, and Christopher Pyne got his seat from his father. So that's just three there, right, for you off the top of my head. Three families that are political families. She's like, oh, we don't have a version of the Bushes here. Menzies, they're our version of the Bushes. That's really, we every country has political families. To say that we don't,
they might just be less explicit or less covered by the media, but yeah, they're there.
Yeah, no, they're definitely there.
The only reason they're less covered is because we don't have any families who have been prime minister twice. That's the reason why people don't consider us have political families, because we don't have we don't have a thing like 2 Roosevelts or 2 Bushes or anything,
Yeah.
or almost 2 Clintons. That's for people who don't think we have political families. We do. It's just that we haven't had any family that has 2 prime ministers from their family. Then the next question we have is definitely one for you, Jack. How do you plan on making change?
That's so broad.
It is very broad. Don't be afraid to speak up. That's the best thing I can say is accept that civil disobedience has consequences. Standing up for yourself, defying illegitimate laws and edicts that make no sense is going to get you arrested. It's going to make you a target. Understand that the more people that do it, the less of a target you become. Because if it's a normal thing, then civil disobedience doesn't generate the same consequences if everyone is doing it.
Well,
So that's basically that is what I can say is
yeah.
Don't be afraid to stand up and say something. If something isn't right, say it isn't. Because if you don't say something, no one will. Because if you say something first, other people will follow.
The only thing is, we need a way to promote that, to promote the idea of disobedience being the way forward. That's kind of my thing, where we really need effective communication channels for that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the Discord's for. The Discord is for that kind of stuff, to talk. Like, it's got all the...
Yes, but it's still for those in the inner circle, for those who are following us.
Sure, but there's no reason that Discord can't get 60,000 people on it. You know what I mean?
The link that is out there is public. It's in the link tree for my pages, and I'm doing up a link tree for the entire network at some point, which will have this in as well. And that's linked. That's linked in every podcast description as well. But that's what that's for. That is for building the community.
So that isn't necessarily a inner circle thing. So that Discord is, and it's not even just for Australia. It's for anyone that wants to come in and have a discussion. And
I understand, but what I mean is for people who already engaged with our content. That's basically what I'm saying.
But it's an easier way to get people involved, to get them listening. Yes. Obviously, the podcast is a better way to do it, but for people who don't have time to listen to a podcast, who have 5 minutes to talk to people, then that's what it's for. And it's also got the voice chats there, so we can talk to people, actually talk to people. But I don't know, it's a hard road forward. The easier response is don't change it, leave. Let them dig themselves into a hole and come back when it's rectified. That's the easiest. Some people can't afford to leave, and I understand that. I'm one of them. If I could afford to leave, I wouldn't fucking be here anymore. I would have left 6 months ago. But if I can't leave, I'm gonna try and change it. I've got some plans in the works, which I'm not gonna say now, but
not on live podcast.
No. So I've got some plans. I don't know whether it's gonna change anything, but I think it's going to need a lot of support. It's going to need some lawyers, and it's going to need a lot of finessing, but it could work. It could very much work.
I also, and I agree with you.
So it's very much it's not a thing that can change in 6 months. It's a thing that changes over 20 years. It's a change that we will not be able to enjoy. And we have to understand this, that we are going to have to put in the effort to try and hopefully make a change that we're not going to enjoy. We're not going to see it. And that's what that I think is the biggest thing that scares people away, is they want to see the fruits of their labor, but they're
Yeah,
not
immediate
going to.
results.
And this is a problem with the younger people our age, is
Well-
that it's instant gratification. They want instant gratification. If it's not instant, they don't want it. They don't want to put hard work in.
It's not just that; it's also people who don't think they're going to have impact, and people who
Yeah.
basically just judge the amount of effort it would take for any change to happen, and deciding, yeah, it's not worth it. I'll just live out till the end of my life, and after that, I don't have to worry. And
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the long-term thinking, including thinking beyond your lifespan, that's sort of thing which disappeared from everyone basically, except for a handful of people who are generally on the right or libertarians. Like they're the only ones who seem to be thinking in the long term, and
It's a very American mindset to set up your future generations.
it's
And I
well,
think that's because the government historically has never supported people. The government was there to make sure the economy didn't collapse, and they
yeah,
were
but
protected.
I think it also used to be there for Europe. It used to be there for other countries, but it just disappeared everywhere other than the US much faster. That's kind of what I would say.
It very much coordinated with the rise of the EU, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, and unfortunately, well, it is also somewhat correlated with the decline of religion, because whether you like it or not, religion, like the ideas do support thinking beyond yourself, thinking beyond your own lifestyle.
Absolutely, and this is why I never. A lot of people are like, "Oh, we'd be better off without religion." I'm like, "No, we wouldn't."
Yeah, I don't think so. Like,
You don't
not-
have to subscribe to a religion, but we definitely need it in society
Yeah,
because if
it's not something I'm invested in, because
No.
but I understand why it's good.
yeah, and it's basically comes down to this: if religion is absent, the state becomes God, and we don't want the state becoming God, which is what is happening right now. People worship the state, and that is a recipe for disaster.
And some people, well, like myself, they can sort of identify their own meaning that doesn't coincide in the state, but it's rare. And for most people, the simple solution used to be God, and now it's the state. For the followers, as you say.
Yeah, that's basically it. So it's very much, and this is the other thing. It doesn't have to be Christianity. It can be Islam. It can be Buddhism.
Christianity is the best option, I'd say.
Literally anything. It can be literally anything. It just as long as they're not worshiping the state.
Honestly, in my opinion,
as long as they aren't atheists.
yeah. Honestly, the best two options, if I had to pick religions, would be Christianity or paganism. Like, honestly. Yeah.
Right, so we have passed the hour 30 mark.
Mhm.
Any concluding remarks before we finish? I think we've gone through all the questions.
I think I've said all I have to say.
Yeah, I've covered everything I wanted.
Fuck
Just,
Daniel Andrews.
Yeah,
And
my closing remark would be, the Liberal Party are fucking useless. Go for Liberal Democrats.
I hope Daniel Andrews falls down the stairs again in Minecraft.
Yeah, didn't break enough bones.
Fuck him. And
Anything?
I fucking hope this IBAC fucking thing destroys him. I really do. It's
that
gonna be a
the-
big day.
is that the
he
corruption thing?
resigns, yeah.
That's the branch stacking. We touched on that briefly at the end of our last episode number 5. We touched on that briefly on
I hope that takes him down, because that's going to be just the purest sense of euphoria I've ever felt. It'll be so good the day that he steps down. Oh,
I thought it was going to get better rapidly, but yeah, it's a step.
All right. Anything you guys want? Anything to plug at all from you guys?
watch my podcast. Go to my Twitter. It's that here. That's my Twitter. Everything's in the link tree.
Follow my Twitter if you want to see random bullshit.
Instagram. I have my Instagram, which I've started posting my photography again. So go look at that.
Yeah.
Glad to see you're back. You're back being active on that then.
Oh, I can share back to my story again. So I'm gonna start sharing spicy memes again.
Yeah, and
They've hit me with that now. People say to me that they can't share what I'm posting now.
Well, I guess
that-
I'll just
that's
shout out my. I'll just shout out my Twitter. Most of the stuff I post there is I repost, funny stuff from 4chan, a couple of news from all over the world, and sometimes my friends here, and that's about it. I don't really have anything else going on. And also, last message from myself: get involved on a political level. Do whatever you can. Street corner meetings, yeah, those are good. Anything else you find, also probably good. Emails, also suitable. Go for it.
I was also on Break the State. Go listen to that. Apparently, it's good.
apparently.
Yeah, episode 15. They were talking about Australia, the state of Australia. So it was
Finish up then.
good. Yeah, so we're good.
Thank you.
All right.
Cheers,
Thanks
everyone.
for listening.